so nice to be here, and look how full it is. Isn't that brilliant? There's not a spare spot. That's really lovely. It's so good to be here. What I'd like to do before we even start doing anything, I don't know if it's possible with the lights to make the lights in the room a little bit brighter so that we're about equal. So we want to see each other. We're going to have a conversation, not a presentation. So it's really important that we can talk and that we can see each other very, very well. So if we're able to see each other well. The first thing I want you to do once the lights are up is I want you to stand up and I want you to look around the room and find somebody at the other side of the room who you don't know, somebody you've never met. And I want you to do something that your parents told you never to do, and that is to stare at that person and even point at them, okay? So you're going to just stand up, find somebody you don't know, and stare and point at them. Thank you, that's lovely, perfect. Someone away from you, someone not close to you, look right across the room, stare and point at someone. Come on, stare and point. Now I want you to pay attention to what they're wearing. What colour is it? Do they have a scarf on? Have they got glasses? What's their hair like? Right, so really have a good look at them. Really stare and point. Okay. Now I want you to imagine that that person that you are working with is somebody that you've met and you know really, really well. So they're your very, very best friend, that person you're staring at. And I'd like you to go up to that person and give them a big hug. Okay? So off you go. Now that is actually a very important way to start, because I often walk into classrooms and the teacher starts the lesson and hasn't even said hello to the children. Hasn't even said, how are you? What's happening with you today? What's going on? It's actually important to get to know people first. Also today, I'm going to speak till about 10:30. Then we're going to have a pause for coffee, and then we come back in here at 11. And when we pause for that coffee, I want you to find the person you have just met and have a coffee with them, okay? Now, if you also want a coffee with your friends you already know, that's fine, but invite them to join you, okay? Because also what you're going to do is you're going to start forming partnerships. And that doesn't mean for life. It's not a matchmaking service. What it means is that when you're doing good work in education, it's impossible to do it on your own. You need to be working with friends and colleagues and those people around you. It's very easy as a teacher to just be stuck in your own classroom and not reaching out to everybody around you. So by knowing somebody, now you know them quite well. I've met Tio. Hello, Tio. I've got a friend to have coffee with. What we're going to do is you're going to meet that person, have a conversation, maybe see if there's some connection. Maybe there's some work you could do together. Let's try doing a project together, or maybe just over the internet you might swap. I've done a program about this and I'll send you my notes on that, or here's a really good book I've read. Here's the name of the book that I'm reading that you should read. It's a really interesting book. You know, swapping some of those ideas to get started. Also, what you've got on this slide is my email address. What I will do today, so you don't have to be taking masses of notes or anything, you can just relax and enjoy yourself, is that I'll put this presentation, I'll give the presentation to Pia. You can get this, right? You can use it, you can chop it up, you can share it with people, you can do whatever you like with it. So you've got all of those notes. I want to talk about the opening image that's there because I love this image. This little boy is a fashion designer, okay? And he is a really serious fashion designer because he's designed his hat he's wearing. It's a very nice hat, isn't it? Very lovely with the flowers and things. He's designed his dress he's wearing, and he's really happy with that. What he's doing in the picture is he's got sketches of his designs, so he actually draws up his designs for his fashion, and he's also transferring the designs to the computer so that other children in the class via the electronic whiteboard are able to see his designs. And he's a very clever fashion designer because he's also realised as a good fashion designer, you have to come up with the ideas, but you don't have to make it all. So he's got other children in his class making his fashion items based on his design. And he holds fashion parades in the classroom. He's just turned 3. Okay? Now my point in that, and he's real, you can see him there, my point in that is that don't underestimate what children are capable of doing. Because given the right set of circumstances, that child will go and take that forward. Now this has not just been a 10-minute lesson. He does this a lot. And it's ongoing, and children approach him and say, can you design something for us to make? And he draws up dresses and hats and army costumes and all sorts of wonderful things that the children in his class then construct. What's the role of the teacher in that sort of experience? Well, a very good teacher, and luckily this little boy has a lovely teacher. What she does is she provides him with materials to work with, so there's plenty of paper around and plastic bags and different things that he can use to create with. She gives him ideas, so she shows him other fashion designers' work, and she calls him a fashion designer. This is this little boy, and he's a fashion designer. She refers to him as that. And she gives him challenges. Well, fashion designers don't create the hat. They draw the hat first. They modify the hat. So she challenges him. How about you put your designs up online so your parents can see them as well? So she takes the boy further in his adventures. Let's see if this works. Ooh, no, that's all right. I can push a button. It's really easy. What we're going to do over the next hour and a half is I want to focus on the child and what it means to the child to be creative, how it helps the school system to change to a more creative way of approaching the school, and then ultimately why bother in the world? Because, this is about something bigger than just a single child or a single school. It's about what we're actually doing for the future. I have 4 children. Who has children of their own? Put your hands up. That's great, most of you. That's nice, because you'll understand children. Yeah? I remember my first headmaster, a woman, and she said to me, you're a very good teacher, but you'll be an even better teacher when you have children. And I thought, stupid woman. But she was sort of right. I have to admit it, she was sort of right. In some ways maybe I'm not because I don't have as much time, but in other ways I'm probably better. But I've got 4 children and this is my youngest child. And this photo was taken of him when he was about 4 months old. He's now about 14, okay? But I love this photo because in this photo you see a child ready to take on whatever the world has got to offer. His eyes are sparkling. He's even sort of salivating with the joy of the world, right? And I just adore that picture because it's such an energy. that children are born with. So we've got this precious thing that has all of these experiences inside them ready to go. And what do we then, as teachers or educators, do with that experience that we have? And I use the word educators because I think all sorts of people are educators. If you think of some of the best educators you've had in your life, they're not all formally employed as teachers. My grandmother was a good educator. She was able to explain things with a lot of wisdom. My older brother was a good educator when it came to teaching me how to drive, because I learnt more from learning to drive with him than either attempts by my to teach me to drive. Right? So different people can be good educators for different things. So what do we do with that experience that the child is born with? How do we take that experience forward in a way that's meaningful? Now, one way to think of this is to think of this idea of capital. Now, in English, the word capital is usually used to refer to either money you have or property you have. So you sort of have a house, or you have, £100,000 in the bank. But if we think of it, of the different sorts of things we give a child to take forward into their future life, if we think in that way, we can think of education as being an important way of giving the child the capital, the resources they need for whatever they're going to do in life. What are those capitals? Well, the first one is simply the ability to be creative, a creative capital. Because if you are creative, you can cope with a lot of the things that life might throw at you, because you're able to respond, to change, and to move forward. One thing we know for certain about the future is that you're going to have to change. The idea of being in one job and staying in that job for your entire life is unlikely in the future world. Even being in one place is unlikely. If you think of the difference of your life to the life of your parents, let alone your grandparents, you see we know that that's going to be the way things are likely to move forward. So creative capital allows you to adapt and adjust. You can give the child an artistic capital. Most parents want their child to be able to access the joys of the various creative arts. They want them to enjoy music, they want them to enjoy visual things, they want them to enjoy drama or theatre or movies, so they want to pass that on. I was mentioning to the group yesterday, there's a lovely book, and I'll give the name to Pia so she can share it, and read it over a holiday because it makes you smile. A lovely lady called Ellen Dissanayake, she's an anthropologist, and she wrote this book called Homo Aestheticus. And it's a very short book, it's not a massive book. And you know how you sort of, I don't know if you do it, but when I read a book, I sort of in my head am creating a picture of the author. Do you do that as well? You sort of, what's the person like who wrote this book? And I read this book, and it was about this person who'd gone to the Amazon and Mongolia and whatever. And I was thinking she was going to be sort of this huge woman dressed in green army clothes who tackles all this thing. And I had the pleasure to meet her, and she's this tiny little woman, about this high, sort of shoulder height to me, which is little. And she was wearing sort of pearls and a pink twin set like the Queen. And it was like, oh, I didn't imagine you'd look like that. But anyway, she wrote this wonderful book where what she said was, in every group of people, in every part of the world, parents actively promote an artistic development in their child. And she used, for example, when a parent talks to a little child, or even a stranger talks to a little child, they automatically get a more musical voice. Hello, how are you? Oh, it's so nice to see you. You suddenly become na 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 na. She found in all different languages it was almost the same tune. So we were sort of speaking in this repetitive tune to children. We also use more drama. Our eyes open wider, our mouth exaggerates, we use more hand signals, we use body movements, hello, oh, it's so good. We do all this strange sort of behaviour, no? And you see it I now watch people in the supermarket. I love it because you see these people doing it all the time, And we even start before a baby's born. I've got a friend who's pregnant at the moment, and she said complete strangers come up and do this sort of random, oh, it's so nice, look at your dummy. So we're already starting to do this promotion of creative thinking, this artistic sort of way of working. A recent study has actually shown that babies cry in the accent of the country that they come from. So that French babies cry in French. Italian babies cry in Italian. I mean, isn't that gorgeous? It's just so brilliant. So this artistic capital is built very early on in how we are as human beings. It's there, and we actively encourage it. When a child is born, we really promote it. So it must serve some purpose in the life of the child. Then you've got a cultural capital. Now, it's interesting, we migrated, we're immigrants. My family, we all migrated from Australia to England about 8 years ago. Now, one can learn, I still spoke English in Australia, I still speak English in England, but learning the cultural capital is quite complex. Even though Australia's origins came a lot from Britain, very different cultures. And having to understand that culture is quite difficult when you have to learn it as a second language as an adult. And think of that when children come to Sweden if they also don't speak Swedish. Think of the amazing skill they have to learn that capital, that cultural capital. Imagine if you were tomorrow placed in a school in Nigeria or in Romania or in some other country. How would you quickly learn very basic things other than the language, even if you assume the language remains the same? So learning cultural capital is extremely important. The arts can also increase your economic capital, and I'll come back to that later in the talk, but it adds value if something is artistic, right? If something has an artistic element, it's worth more. My house was broken into the night before I came here, which has never happened to me before, so it was a bit of a, oh, my house has been broken into. They took some computers, but they didn't take the artworks. In fact, the artworks, can't put this online, but the artworks would be much more valuable than the computers because they have an economic value way in excess of a new laptop because it's someone's talent has gone into the production of that in a very creative way. Social capital, how we get along with each other. I loved the comment that was said, I was talking to, sorry I've forgotten your name, the lady who does the basketball, where you're hiding. Say your name. Sarah, that's right. I'm useless at names. Good at faces, bad at names, okay? I'm a visual learner. Sarah was saying she played basketball and then she stopped playing basketball and then she started to get into the arts. I said, how did you get into the arts? And she said, the arts people party better. Right? And it's like, yeah, social capital. It's true. A friend of mine who is an artist said you can always tell a conference with art people because they start dancing before even the entree's been served, So if you want to have the good parties, right, that's the social capital. Innovation capital, the ability to come up with new ideas. And really ideas are the currency of the future. Having good ideas is really important. And one of the things you have to work with children is encouraging them to get more and more ideas. Now, sadly, the school system is often about taking all their ideas and pushing it through a very narrow funnel. So you've got all these ideas about mathematics, but I don't care. I only care about this selection of ideas that are going to be in the test. So we actually reduce the number of ideas a child has. The little 3-year-old fashion designer is probably not going to get any chance to do that once he starts formal school. So his ideas, which are very developed around that, will be left behind. So this idea of innovation capital. Then you've got spiritual capital, just feeling good. And that's so important. I don't know about you, but if I've had a bad day at work, first thing I do is get in my car, put some music on, and by the time I've driven home with that music on, I'm all over it. You know, I'm fine again. Because somehow that experience of music lifts you to another place. If you go to London, to the West End, you see theatres full of people. You know, there are shows everywhere. There must be 200 or 300 shows on at any one time. Why do people go to those shows? Because for that hour and a half or that 2 hours, they're moved to a different place. Les Mis has just been out in the theatres, in the cinemas, and that people are crying as they walk out of it, you know, because it's moved them to a different place spiritually, right, in their hearts. Educational capital. It makes you learn better. And I'll come back in detail to this because this is going to give you the argument to tell other people why you're doing things the way you're doing it. Even if they don't think it's a good idea, you have the arguments. The next four, though, the bottom four, are slightly harder to understand until I give, I hope, some examples to explain. Negative loss capital means exactly that. What would you lose if you don't have it? What do you lose if you don't have it? So, for example, in some of my schools, and I'll talk about my schools in a minute, but in some of my schools, they say, well, we're very busy, we've got to focus this year on maths and science, so therefore we're not doing much in the arts. And I say to them, well, ban them. Stop doing the arts. Don't have them. And then they go, oh, no, we couldn't do that. The children would kill us if we stopped the play that's on every year. And, oh, no, we have singing on Mondays. And so suddenly they start to see what would be missing if they were really to withdraw that thing from their life. Now, I asked a question yesterday. If I was to take all of your music, right, so no singing, no humming, no iPods, no music in the car, no listening to the radio in the morning, if I was to take all of it for a month, right? You can't have any of it for a month. How much money would you expect me to give you that would allow you to actually sell that to me for a month? Now, most people, the people yesterday, said about 1,000 before we started to get some people that say, yeah, actually, for 1,000 I'd get rid of it, yeah. And one guy actually said, which was a good point, maybe I just need a space from all of that for a while, which is interesting too. But you have to think about, if you don't want to focus on something, what is the danger? What would you lose by not doing it? Think of Swedish society. What would have it lost if it didn't have music? You'd be such a different place. And I think you'd be a really bad place, actually. So therefore, you'd have a huge loss if music wasn't a focus in Swedish society. It would become really, really important. But what if I said, sell me all your maths for a month? Some would give it away for free, I can see. Just buy the lot, right? You can have it. Don't want any of it, right? You can see what I'm saying, the value of it. That comes down to the next one, which is the comparative capital. If you do this or if you do that, what's going to be the value of it for me? Now, this is difficult. When I was working with UNESCO, it's quite hard to say, put in £2 million of UNESCO's money for arts, or put it to clean water, AIDS education. It's really tricky then, because obviously you wouldn't want a child to starve so they could get some music. So you start to have quite difficult decisions when you're at that really cutting edge. And I remember one, which was a big discussion, was the children in refugee camps. And we said, these children, more than anybody, need the arts because they've been through really difficult circumstances. Wherever they end up in the world, they're going to need to quickly understand that cultural capital, so they're going to need skills in this area. But to say, well, let's put money into those art lessons for those young people at the expense of something else is a really difficult question. These are not I don't have an answer. I haven't got a sort of magic thing. And that ties then to the next one, which is ethical capital. Should we just insist on this because it is a good thing to insist on? So even if policymakers say, we want you to spend less time on the arts, or children after they're 16 don't need the arts, have we got an ethical thing that actually says, well, forget you, I am going to do this. I am going to do this because ethically I think this is really, really important. And you have to, as a teacher or a leader in a school or a policymaker, make those decisions all the time. Even if this is not funded or not supported, will I ethically see that this is something my school should do? And the last one is the one you never know about. And this is what they call catalytic capital. And this is how one moment in one classroom in one part of the world fundamentally changes the pathway of an individual child. And you never know. Now, I was referring to this one when I was standing on a stage in Reykjavik, launching the national report I'd done about arts and cultural education in Iceland, right? And I was standing on the stage and saying, really, the reason I'm standing on this stage is Mrs. Holman. Mrs. Holman was my grade 5 teacher. I've never met Mrs. Holman since I was in grade 5, right? And she wasn't even my grade 5 teacher for the whole year. She was only my grade 5 teacher for the last term of school because the teacher I'd had for the rest of the time was an alcoholic, right? And he'd been, gotten rid of politely, right? And Mrs. Holman turned up for the last term of school. Mrs. Holman liked drama. And Mrs. Holman must have seen the way to capture the mind of Anne, who was sitting in that class, was to use drama. And it caught my mind. At the same time, and I think she had organised to get the application, I did a painting for a local competition for art in the library. And my painting won. Now, I still don't know to this day whether I was the only 10-year-old who entered, so I had to win, right? But it was enough of an impact to make me think, oh, I'm a bit artistic, I am. And so therefore, it was directly responsible for me being literally on the other side of the world in Reykjavik when I was 50. Now that's catalytic capital. You don't know who you talk with today who sometime in the future, Mrs. Holman has no idea, she's probably passed away now, I don't know, but she had no idea of her impact on that journey. And that's true for a lot of teachers. But it's a responsibility, isn't it? Because had Mrs. Holman not, I don't know what I'd be doing now. So a tiny little thing can make a lot of difference. She might not remember me at all, and I remember her very distinctly. She also wore red nail polish, which I liked. So to the child, let's now drill down. Some of the most interesting stuff I'm reading at the moment is about the brain and how the brain works. Because the technology's developed that we can now see thinking. I think that's so exciting. But what it's revealed is fascinating when it comes to creativity. Because we've all felt, yes, creativity is sort of good for children, but we haven't actually known why. What we now know about the operation of a brain is this thing called Neuro Plasticity, which is the movement of things around the brain. If you think of it, it's sort of like the highway system, or in England I say the tubes, the metro in London. Because it's not the stations that are important, but the journey that happens between the stations. Now, what we notice in creative thinking, as opposed to all other kinds of thinking, is that the pattern is this crazy, like spiderwebby looking pattern. In all other sorts of thinking, you sort of get like a hot spot in one area and nothing much happening in the other bits. But when it's creative thinking, it's like an explosion of travel going everywhere in the brain. Now, what's interesting about little children is when they're babies, their brain is doing this all the time. So if you look at a child brain, it is constantly doing this. As the child grows up, and it corresponds with when they start school, we start to see this stopping, and it no longer does this all the time. Now, we don't know yet whether school causes it or it's just some factor about that time. But what we see is between 6 and about 10, this slows right down. In some people, it starts up again, creative people. In other people, it goes to this lower level and declines or stays roughly the same for the rest of their life. And they've lost it, putting it that bluntly that way. There is also a connection they're seeing between dementia and Alzheimer's, because people with dementia and Alzheimer's have often lost that neuroplasticity very early. So they're starting to put some of these little pieces together. It's early research, it's not conclusive research, but it's very, very interesting. What they found, though, is even people who are highly creative only get that pattern when they actually do something creative, right? So that they couldn't get it just by being passive. They had to actually do something creative. Interestingly, even people like composers didn't get it just sitting in a concert. They only got it when they were making the music, right? So the importance of actively doing it, not just being receptive to it. And then you see this combination, this sort of very active movement going around the mind. Once again, a great piece of research done by a fantastic South American researcher. She's now the chief scientist for Washington, but she's been looking at these brain patterns. Very interesting stuff. I'll give you all of these slides, so don't worry. Okay, given the fact you've got to actively do it, I want you to actively do something now. So you're going to need to stand up and not have anything in your hands. Just stand up where you are. Make sure you can see the screen. It's crucial to be able to see the screen. Okay? Can't have anything in your hands. You'll have to put your book down. Yeah. Okay? Now, the first thing we've got to do is we've got to start a march going. But actually, you have to move your arms as if it's sort of coming from your shoulders. So can we just start marching? Now, I want you to listen to the rhythm in the room and try to keep the rhythm constant. Don't let it go faster. See, it's going fast. Just keep it steady. Keep moving your arms, though, because when I talked, you stopped moving your arms. That's important because actually you stop because one part of your brain is receiving what I'm saying and it affects the physical side. People naturally stay still when they're listening. So you've got to make your arms move. Consciously think of keeping your arms going even though I'm talking because you're fighting your brain a bit here. So you're going faster because you're anxious. Slow down. Because what happens as well, if you think I'm going to ask you to do something, anxiety triggers in your brain that makes you want to go a bit faster. So hold it back. You're like taming your brain, okay? Keep your arms going. Think about them. Don't forget because you're listening. You're getting anxious. Because I'm pausing. It's anticipation. It's an anxiety response. Let's get the rhythm right. Good. Keep your arms going. Think about it. Now keep going. Don't stop because I'm talking. What we're going to say is the colour you see, not the word you read. You're going fast because you're anxious again. Hold it back. See, this is going on in your child's brain all the time in a class. So the first one is not going to be yellow. It's going to be green. Okay? And we go across the line saying those colours. Are we ready? I'll count you in with 3 and then we'll start. Just let's get the rhythm right. Arms aren't moving for some people. Keep it steady. 3. Green, red,
blue, yellow, blue, black, red, blue, green, black, red, yellow, green, blue, black, blue, red, green.
Yay, well done. Give yourselves a clap. Did you notice what just happened the minute you all sat down? What did you all do the minute you all sat down? Started talking, right? Now, I didn't say, right, I want you all to sit down and talk a lot, right? And if I actually said that, as if I'd actually said, and when we finish this exercise, I want you to immediately start talking to the person next to you, you'd have been like, I don't know, right? What actually happens is the activation of the brain, the exercise of the brain, the controlling of the brain in a way, getting it to, I tricked it into doing some neuroplasticity, made you activated. You wanted to talk. It's exactly the same for children. If you watch very young children drawing, they talk constantly while they're drawing, right? Because they're in that state that you just got in. Also, probably what you felt was slightly tired. Did you feel a bit like, as if you'd done some massive aerobics, like you'd done a whole hour workout, right? It's basically because that you've not done that much, right? Your brain's a bit lazy. It's now going, that was a lot of work. How am I going to achieve that, right? So it's important to keep that exercise up because it does go if you're not sort of regularly doing it. Now, here's the scary bit. Who's got teenage kids? Right? Don't tell them this because you'll live to regret telling them this. But they've got better brains than you have. They're actually more intelligent than you are. Terrifying thought. If you teach them, it's even worse, right? Because it means the children in your year 9 class are actually brighter than you are, right? Can be really threatening for some teachers. How do we know this? Because the brain research has shown it. Now, when I say these, you'll actually go, if you've got teenagers, you'll go, I know, right? First of all, they can process visual information much more quickly than we can. Recently, I was looking for summer holiday destinations, and I was sitting next to my daughter, who was helping me to plan. She's 20, right? She was able to have about 50 screens open, and she was flicking so quickly through them, I didn't even know where I was, let alone whether the hotel was good. And I know you wouldn't like that one, Mum. No, that one's no good. No, it hasn't got this, it hasn't got... And I was like, I couldn't even keep my eyes to focus in that sort of period of time, right? So they're able to take on a massive amount of visual information. They have better fine motor skills. Over Christmas, I got a phone upgrade on my phone contract. I hate it because it's a touch thing and it's got predictive text. So when I'm pushing S, it's hitting on R, and then it's writing rat instead of sat, and it's, So it's really crazy because my fingers are not able, haven't got the dexterity to actually do the basic functions of this phone. They're likely to learn by trial and error. Now, the first company to realise this was actually Apple. And when they released their new products, there was no instruction manual because they realised it was a total and utter waste of trees to print one because young users of these and subsequent users would just work it out, right? So you didn't have any instruction. Now, for us people that are a bit older than teenagers, that's quite hard as well because you don't quite know where to start on them. They don't start at the beginning, they start at the most important part, right? And that's interesting too. If we're used to going, that's why they don't like reading much. Well, what's the good bit of the book? You know, is it page 7 to 9 or is it because why am I getting through the whole book to get to the really good bit, which is actually about 3/4 of the way through usually in a book, you know? In a Google culture, they go straight to the best bit. They don't have to bother about all the other bit. They can scan and analyse, they can multitask. I still find this multitasking thing a challenge, and I was speaking actually to a group of teachers at a technology conference in Stockholm. And they said, we find it really hard. The children are on their laptops, their phones and everything, and I'm trying to teach, you know. So it's a challenge, this multitasking. You know, they can listen to music, have their phone going, have their computer going, eat a cheese sandwich and learn. But we can't. And so we think, well, how can you do that? You know, be quiet. I couldn't think, you know. They're more creative. They tend to learn more by experiment and play. If you leave them to their own devices, they'll learn. It's interesting, I've just finished a study in the Faroe Islands, and most of the children, teenagers in the Faroe Islands, have learned to be very good musicians by teaching themselves over the internet. It's a challenge to us. If you're a music teacher, it's like, ooh, that's interesting. Also, they have better distributed cognition, so that neuroplasticity is a lot better than ours. Now, what we don't know was when I was a teenager, did I have all of those things and I've sort of lost it? Or, and this is an interesting thought, are brains getting better? So are brains capable of doing things now that throughout our evolution or our development, we haven't developed those things as well as we're developing them now. Some interesting challenges for us in a classroom. Okay, I want you to do something again, because what you see is I'm not going to stop on your neuroplasticity. Now you're warming up. All right. I want you to imagine that those signs are dance moves. Okay, it's an alphabet of dance, and I've given you 4 letters. Okay, so they're a way of doing dance. Okay? What I want you to do is draw a sequence of 16 of these ones, only using those 4. So what you start with, you might say, well, okay, that sign, sort of like a curved arrow, might mean I go like that. Right? Could equally mean I go like that. Right? You make whatever it means in your head. Okay? And the next line might mean a leg up, or it might mean a hand in the air, or whatever. Okay, so you think of those 4 signs, and we're going to draw up a sequence of 16. So you might start with 2 of them, and then 2 of them, then 2 of them, and then 2 of them, and then you might repeat it again back and have, you know, something else. But you end up with 16 of those little images. And I want you to quickly draw them on any piece of scrap paper that you've got, right? Okay. Now what I want you to do, still staying in your seats, you can move now the top part of your body. And can you do it like a mirror? Hold together and do it like a mirror, okay? So this time I'll say 1, and you'll all form with the top half of your body your 1. So 1. Some of you are too slow. Try it again. Ready? So look on your paper again so you know what you're going to do. Right? Got it in your mind? 1. Much better. Okay? Try it again. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. Right. Okay. This half from here across, I want you to go and stand over there, and this half stand over there and make some space. You can even come on the stairs or to the back. Be quick. Take your dance things. Move quickly, find a space. You can wriggle anywhere around. Just make enough space, you're not going to sort of poke the eye out of the person next to you. Move around, you can go along the back there near the cameraman's fine, wriggle around. Okay, have you got a space? because you don't want to sort of fall over as you do this, okay? Now this time we want to put a bit of style into it, okay? So you're still following your movements, but you sort of, ham it up a bit, right? You can do a bit of fun with it, okay? Let's just get you into one. One. Too slow. Come on, you should have it in your heads now. One. Okay, good, all right? As we get towards 14, 15, 16, I want you to build to a crescendo, right? So you're going to really by 16 and then hold 16, all right? Okay, are we ready? I'll count in with 3 and then we start. So, ready? I'll go fairly fast, so be up with your own notes, yeah? Ready? 1. No. I'll count. Ready? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. Ray, give yourselves a big clap. Well done. Sitting down again, folk. Now, once again, see how activated you were, right? How activated that moment. And many of you repeated it, did it again when you sat down, all of the things we would want children to do. If I was doing this with a class and if I wasn't catching a plane this afternoon, we could do a whole lot of other things. We could say, well, let's create a whole alphabet. Let's do the A to Z and let's have all of dance movements for every letter of the alphabet. Let's create a dance of our name or a dance of a line of Shakespeare using the letters that we've assigned to those movements. We could start to say, let's put your 16 and your 16 and your 16 and your 16 together and create a full dance. How about you teach your 16 to this group over here and get them to do your 16 and you learn theirs so you can do theirs and put that all together. Maybe what we're going to say is let's link this to other things we could learn about. So maybe we could link it to history because Egyptian hieroglyphics were symbols of movements and of actions. How could we link through to that? Maybe we could link it to mathematics. Hang on, we could think of angles and body movement. With your arms, make 45 degrees. Go on, make 45 degrees. How many people copied me? Is that 45 degrees? Is that 45 degrees? No. Right. Make 180. Make 180. Good. Make 360. Okay. Now you three together make 360. But you can't make the same. It's got a total 360. Okay. Yep, okay, they've solved it. You can see how it could link to a whole lot of different areas, and we could go on with that if we wanted to go on with it. Active learning. I want to talk about happiness. I talk a lot about happiness in England because children in the UK are the unhappiest in Europe. So it's a really important issue, happiness. Swedish children are at the top end of happiness. They're not the happiest, but they're happier than English children, by and large. A good thing to do with a group of children is to get them to draw how they see other children like school. Right? So draw the class how you think they like school. Very revealing how they draw the faces of the children in the group and how they draw themselves. Bhutan has a national index of happiness as its measure of whether the government is doing a good job. Wouldn't that be nice for the Minister of Education? How happy are we all with the Minister of Education? You can make an index of happiness related to that. Nigerian people are the happiest people in the world, Nigerian children. So if you're lucky enough to teach a Nigerian child, you've got a really happy person, or you should have. Okay, this is my same son, the one you saw in the first picture, and this is his first day of school in Australia, because we're immigrants. We live in England, but he was born in Australia. And you can still see the sparkle in his eyes, right? It's still alive at that point, you know, it's still there, that sparkle that he has. What happens when the child enters the school world? I think we have to do 4 things. Firstly, we have to make sure the child gets enough education in the arts. So in other words, there's enough visual arts, music, drama in the curriculum day. Okay? That's the first job we have to do. Check, have we done that? Second job is about education through the arts. Now this is things like visual literacy. For example, a doctor could not do an operation today if they're not visually literate, because they've learnt looking at pictures. And just as well they have. Would you rather the heart surgeon who'd read the notes in the book or the heart surgeon who'd seen the picture? Which one would you want to have operating on you? I'd want the one with the picture, not the description. You know, it's the wiggly thing next to the other big thing. It wouldn't be really good, right? So reading images is crucial now. If you buy a new car, the car talks to you in images, doesn't it? You know, you've got picture series. If you can't read those images, you're really going to be stuck. When we know that most images, particularly presented of women, have been digitally manipulated, it's important our teenage girls know how to read images for a very different reason. Because if they don't, then they've got potential problems. So that's through the arts. You also have art as education, and this is where great art in society has always been used to explain things that are so complicated to explain, we really struggle. So, for example, religion has a lot of great art associated with it. Because when things are really hard to explain, you turn to art. If you go to a funeral, it has a lot of art in it. Right? There'll be singing, there'll be music. Because when things are really difficult, when you get to the end of what you can explain, somehow the art will take over and sort of take you to that next point. So a lot of difficult things to explain can actually be explained really well through art, right? Through a movie that makes you cry, a stage show that makes you laugh, or a painting that makes you, awe-inspired. You can learn through those things. Like I say, Picasso's Guernica says more about war than any textbook ever said, and has deeper understanding of how awful it must be to be in that sort of situation. And finally, and this is crucial, really good education is itself beautiful. It is itself art. And you know those moments because they're the moments when the eyes do sparkle, right? That's why the book's called The Wow Factor, because it's that moment when the child goes, wow, or you as the teacher go, wow, because you go, how did they do that? It's amazing. You know, those precious moments. I hope you picked up a DVD. I don't know, are we all out of them? They've run out, have they? But because they have a really good teacher at work, and you'll see those wow moments happening. Because when it happens, it's an art form. Education. Now what we owe children is all those 4 things. That's a really big responsibility to have. Some facts that are interesting. the main economies of the world spend more than double on education, but the results haven't changed at all. Right? So all that money hasn't led to any difference. So money is not the problem. And I say that because if I say, why don't you do something, people always say money and time. Right? But money, we know from the research, doesn't make an enormous difference. Second thing, this is a tricky one. It is better to pay your teachers more than to have small class sizes. A higher paid teacher is better than a smaller class at improving results. Now, I know that's like, ooh, gee, here are I arguing for smaller class sizes. Right? Actually, you should be arguing more money and bigger class sizes. You'll actually get a better result. Finland. I know we hate Finland. So it's so good at everything, aren't they? But Finland has one lot of testing for children, and that's when they leave. Right? So they don't have tests all the time. That's important in England because we test and test and test and test and test. Poor kids just do nothing but be tested for everything all the time. School dropout rates are growing really rapidly. I did a study in Norway, and one of the scary things in Norway is the very best students are dropping out of school. The really clever ones are dropping out of school because school is no longer relevant for them. They just stop altogether. We're seeing it a bit in Sweden with children doing what I call school shopping, especially in the larger cities, with the number of free schools. I'll go to this one for 6 months, I'll go for that one for another 6 months, I'll go here for a while. And then in the end, they stop going at all because none of them fulfill what they're looking for. So the dropout rates are growing rapidly. Yeah. I think the problem is, particularly in Norway, the children are very affluent and they've got a lot of choices about where they get the knowledge and learning they need. And schools don't compare very well to the other choices they can make. So, for example, they can go online. What's this site where you've got all the lectures from people? Not TED, there's another one that's got but that you can get the very best person in the world talking about that. Why have your teacher who doesn't know much talking about it? So I think young people are taking different options. They're often not dropping out to do nothing. They're dropping out to do something, but it's not what the authorities would want them to do. Does that make sense? They're finding their own path. You know, like water. If you take water at the top of a mountain, it'll find its own line down the mountain. And that's what children are doing. This, I think, is a really interesting little metaphor for how out of touch the education system's becoming. In England, children, when they're in the 6th class, or the last class in primary school, have to do a test, and the test decides what sort of secondary school the child's going to get into, okay? Because they pull all the bright kids off into a separate school for some crazy reason, right? So what they do is they have this test. Now, this was an actual question in one of the tests that they had. It was in the English test. And they'd used the writing of a fantastic children's author, a guy called Michael Rosen, the name that's there. If you read any of his children's books, they're lovely. They're really gorgeous. And he wrote this lovely book about matchboxes. And the story's a great story because basically it's a simple story. The little boy has a matchbox, and every time he opens the matchbox, something else amazing could be in the matchbox, right? It's got an elephant, it's got a puppy, it's got ice cream, right? So every time he opens the matchbox, something he imagines is inside the matchbox, right? Now, they used an extract from this story as the test question. And the test question said, read this extract and answer the question. And it was a multiple choice question because then a computer can mark it. You don't need a human intervention, right? And it said, what was in the matchbox? And the correct answer the test gave was answer A, nothing. Now, anybody who read that story knew that the matchbox contained everything. Everything you could possibly imagine was inside. the matchbox. But the correct answer, according to the test, was nothing. Now, to me, that is just a story that shows how out of touch the education system had become. Because every child knew that everything was inside that matchbox, but the people who set the test had missed the point totally of what was going on. This product is called lip service, and it's the thing we often give to areas of the curriculum, such as the arts. So we say, oh yes, this school, we do music in this school, we have a Christmas concert every year. Lip service. Or, yes, we do drama. When the children are getting a bit restless, we'll get them up and say, right, do a 5-minute drama. That doesn't take any preparation. That's a good idea. Lip service. Or we say, yes, it's probably important that the children who are 16 learn to dance. We'll get somebody in to teach them for 2 weeks how to dance, and then that way they won't be embarrassing at the end of the year dance we're going to have. Lip service. It's not fundamentally changing the educational landscape. I'll use another metaphor, and this is the metaphor of the black swan. And if you do nothing else today, please put a picture of a black swan somewhere up in your office or in your school or wherever you think. Because people believed every swan in the world was white. Because at some point, before people travelled a lot, the only swans that existed were white swans. So it was a reasonable assumption to make at that time that white swans are the only sort of swans that will ever exist. That was until they saw black swans. And then they realised it wasn't just white, there was white or black, right? Now, I suspect a lot of education is stuck in white swans, right? Even though they've seen the black swans, they're going to close their eyes and pretend there's still only white swans because it's a lot easier if all the swans were white, right? I think you're getting the message of the swan, I hope. On your paper, draw a circle. Draw a circle. I want you to divide the circle according to past, present, and future. And this is how much of what happens in schools is to do with the past, how much of what happens in schools is to do with now, and how much of what happens in schools is to do with the world in the future. Okay, so you're going to divide it up. How much is to do with what happens about things in the past? How much is to do with what happens about the world now? And how much is about what happens to the world in the future? Right? Divide it off. School today now in Sweden. Yep. So how much is past, how much present, how much future, okay? Stand up if the biggest piece of your pie was for the past. That's actually interesting because it's still a majority, but not as big a majority as usually you get, right? Did anyone have the biggest part of their pie was about the future? The biggest part was about the future. Great. Are you in schools or are you in the arts? A mix, yeah. Because it's in every country where I ask this question, yeah. Yeah. Good. And did you have more about the future? Yeah. Good. Good. That's interesting. Just say that again in the preschool. Say it again. Secondary school needs to learn a lot from preschool. Because when we're preparing a child, we are preparing them for the future. It should be that our pie is overwhelmingly for the future. Some for the present and very little for the past. And yet in almost every country in the world, it's the same sort of division of the pie. Okay, we're going to do a test. I don't want you to talk about this test. It's an important test. It's a creativity test. I want you to get a pencil, paper, be ready to start. When I say start on your test, don't cheat, don't look at anyone, don't talk. Keep your hands to yourselves, eyes up. Are we ready for the test? Okay. I want you to think about subjects that are in the school day now. Okay, so you've got maths and you've got Swedish and you've got science or biology, geology, you've got physical education, you've got art, you've got music, okay? I want you to take one of those subjects and imagine 2 new names for parts of that subject. So for example, mathematics, its new name could be called number and pattern, for example, right? So take a subject now, 2 new names, write the 2 new names down. Don't talk, it's a test. I know you Swedish people don't take tests seriously, it's very important. That's why we don't do well on Pisa. It's nothing to do with us not being good, we just don't listen in the test. Okay, you've written the 2 names down, the new subjects you've created from an old subject. Okay? Next, what I want you to do is to choose one of those names. So if mine was number and pattern, I might now choose pattern as my word. Okay? So you can put a circle around it or something so you remember. Then I want you to write down what is the single most important thing you would want a child to learn if you were teaching them about pattern or whatever your subject is. Okay, so the single, just one thing, but it has to be the very most important thing you would want them to learn. Now, taking that thing you've just written, which is the most important thing to learn, I want you to think about something you could do, a project you could do with the children to make them learn that really important thing. And nothing is a barrier, right? You can take them up in a helicopter, you can fly them to the other side of the world, they can go bungee jumping, you can do anything if it's going to help them learn that single most important thing that you're putting down. Time is not an issue, money's not an issue, place is not an issue. You can do anything. What would you do? Write it down. Sarah, can I steal you for a minute? In a sec, I want to hand out these. And there's probably about one between 5 or 6 people, yeah? Not yet. Okay. So now you've got the new name of the subject, you've got the thing that you're going to really focus on learning, and you've thought of some clever project or experience you can do to learn it. Now the last thing is I want you to bring to that project, to that idea you've come up with, one thing you've never done before, right? So for example, if I've never spoken Russian, I could introduce Russian to the project in some way, okay? So think of something you've never done and introduce that to the project. Now, Sarah's going to come round and she's going to give you a fortune cookie, right? And you have to share it between about 6 people. So just sort of turn around. Don't open it yet. Just sort of make a little group of about 6 people with your fortune cookie. Don't open it yet. Don't open it yet. Don't open it yet. Have you got enough fortune cookies? Keep going till they're all gone. Who hasn't got one near them? Just wave. All right, throw one up there somewhere to share. Throw it up. If we've got any more, who hasn't got one? Put your hand up, throw, pass it up. Any more? Who hasn't got one near them? Throw one up. You have to share any more? That's till they're all gone. They're all gone? Yep. One more. Who hasn't got one near them? Throw. Okay. Someone's opened their fortune cookie. It's a test. Don't you listen to instructions of a test? Okay. What I want you to do is then open the fortune cookie, read what is written inside the fortune cookie, and somehow include the message inside the fortune cookie in your plan for your lesson you've developed. You can eat the fortune cookie as well, it's edible. Okay, so somehow you've got to include the message that's held within that in your lesson. Now, what you have done there is create an educational plan, right? We've just done a series of educational planning for the future. Because what we've done, first of all, is thought the name of our subjects maybe are gone by the by. Maybe we need new, different types of names of our subjects. Then we have to focus not on 20 objectives, because if you have 20 objectives, you won't achieve anything. You have to focus on what is the really important thing you want a child to know about, right? Then what you've done is you've come up with what is the very best way I can think of to get a child to know that thing. Then what you did was, as a teacher, whatever form that takes, as a teacher, you thought, I've also got to keep myself interested by involving something in this lesson that I've never done before. Because if you've already taught that 7 times over, you're not going to be that excited. So you have to introduce something you've never introduced before into that lesson. And then surprise is always good, hence the fortune cookie, because you didn't know what would happen. It was something different. It gave you a different idea again as to where you might go. Now, if you think of that set of tests or that set of questions, how exciting if you did that for every lesson. Right? Now, it took you 2.5 minutes to do that test. Right? So it's not a really long test if you gave that test to every lesson that you taught. Right? What am I really teaching here? What's most important to learn? How can I do it in the most wonderful way possible? What surprise element can I bring into it that's new for me as well? And how can I just put something quirky that nobody expects to come into that? try and actually do your lesson, have fun with it. I'm going to jump forward. Start small as well. This is a town in Sweden where they've just started to do this and to share their ideas, right? So you don't have to do it massively. You might just do a little bit in your school or around the area. You don't have to be really huge with it. I did a piece of research with teachers in England where I put up 20 photos on the internet and they had to choose the one that most represented how they saw their work. That was it. It's so sad, isn't it? And that was the one, how they wanted their work to be. Even that worried me a bit. Okay, quick exercise. I'm going to give you a minute on this one. Here are some letters. 3 of the letters go together. I want you to come up with why 3 of the letters go together and which letters go together. And you're going to have 1 minute exactly to do this, okay? Because time is of the essence here, okay? Right? So 3 of the letters belong together. If you think you've got the answer, start putting your hand up. Don't talk. Yeah, put your hand up if you think you've got an answer. Yeah, 3 of them go together, and there's some reason why they go together. Put your hand up when you think you've got the answer. Yeah, keep it up, because I want to see when, half of more, half of you've got the answer. Okay. Tell me what the answer is, please. Okay, right. You had an answer. What's your answer? Yep. Brilliant. You've got an answer. What's your answer? Right at the back. Yep. The lady next to you. Yep. What about them? Ah, that's a nice one. I like that. And was it you? Somewhere over here had an answer. Who had their hand up before over here? Okay, lady there. Yep. Have a vertical line, yeah, perfect, okay. Now, by the way, those set of letters were just random. I just thought that'd make you think, right? But the point of this is if you ask a child what is 3 plus 3, they can only give you one answer. What is the answer? 3 plus 3, or 3 adding 3. 6. If I ask a child, tell me as many questions as you can think of that have an answer of 6. It is much better learning because there's many, many, many. I didn't have an answer for that, and as I say, they weren't important letters, All of your answers were right, and all of them were really interesting. Actually, nobody's ever said the one about musical notes. I loved that. I'll use that one because that was brilliant, really lovely. Those are Pisa scores. Do you know that? That's what they are. In the 3 times you've done your Pisa testing, the position of Sweden hasn't actually changed at all. Now, you'll have heard different stories about that because politically people use it different ways. But if you take out the new countries that have joined Pisa, it hasn't changed at all. Basically, you're sort of in the middle, a bit above the middle. Sweden's just between the US, but you're better than Germany at reading. You're not so good at maths and you're pretty rubbish at science. And that hasn't changed, right? In 9 years, it hasn't really changed. Those are also Pisa scores. Once again, countries, how you do. The key thing about this is that all of those children that are on that side of this black line are fine because they know everything they need to know to be okay as an adult when it comes to literacy, numeracy and science thinking. The children on this side who are dark purple, it's a real worry because the dark purple children on this side really don't have those basic things that they would need to learn. Now, what's interesting in Sweden, I said your position hasn't changed, which is true. What has changed, though, is your dark purple bit has got worse. That's the really important thing. Where do you get this? On the... I don't know if Nigeria even listed on this one. They may not do the test. Kyrgyzstan is the worst. Yeah. Okay, they're not happy and they don't learn, a lot of the kids. This then is another way of presenting that information, because this is the educational inequality mapping. And this is the difference between the results of the child in the best school and the results of a child in the worst school. Now what you see on this, there's a really bad problem in the United Kingdom, because apart from Qatar and Brazil, there is the biggest difference between the best schools and the worst schools. Whereas in the Netherlands, you've got a great situation, because no matter what school you go in the Netherlands, you're going to get a very good education, because in Pisa they're about 8, and all schools are about number 8, right? So you can go, that's good, if you're a Dutch child or a Dutch parent, right? What's interesting is this is where Sweden is moving this way, right? You were up next to the Netherlands and you're going closer to the United Kingdom. So you're going the wrong way on this one, yeah? That is the percent of schools who say they do good arts and cultural programs in their schools, but they lie. Because we know that about 1/3 of all programs are so poor in quality that it would be better if they didn't do them in their school at all. No? So if you're going to do it, you have to do it very well. And I'll come to those key points, what it means to do it well at the end. Here's some things to think about. 9 out of 10 children say that they learn the best if they're outside of school, no? Not in a classroom. Really interesting figure, 86% of teachers also say they learn best if the children are not in the school. Right? It is a black swan, right? Because we ignore that research, and it's very conclusive research, right? It's very clear cut. Your point about the children in preschool, they're more likely to learn outside if they've got an experienced teacher in the younger years. They're least likely to learn outside if they've got an inexperienced teacher in the later years. If your child is lucky enough to go to an arts-rich school, they get a whole lot of benefits. They're more likely to do mathematics, more likely to behave better, more likely to turn up on time to school. A guy called James Cattrall, and I'll give all these details through to Pia, has been looking at 27,000 children in the US, tracking their unique numbers, because you keep a number for all your life. And children that went to arts-rich schools continue to do better. By the age of 20, they're nearly 18% more likely to go to university, 15% more likely to volunteer, 8% more likely to have friendships, 20% more likely to vote, right? So some really interesting findings. As I said, he hasn't got a life because he's following the children through. And at 26, the difference between the children who went to an arts poor school, a school that doesn't do the arts or doesn't do it well, compared to those that went to a school that does it well, has got even bigger, the advantages. And the crucial thing, the poor children in the arts poor school are 5 times as likely to be dependent on public welfare by the time they're 26. You know, staggering figures. Why for the world? First of all, because you have to. There are laws, both European laws and international laws, that say everybody is entitled to culture. That is the law from the United Nations Declaration of Human Rights. Right? I think Sweden could be challenged on this law because it's no longer happening for children aged between 16 and 18 here in Sweden. You're breaking the law in relation to those children. The growth of technology has meant that we cannot predict the sort of jobs we need for the future. All we can do is make sure that children have a set of skills that they can apply. So the whole apps industry, there's no school course called apps, there's no university course called apps, there's no teacher education in apping, right? That whole industry developed because people taught themselves. People cooperated with each other, exchanged ideas, and taught themselves. I did a big piece of research with Nesta looking at what skills do employees look for when they're choosing people. They didn't say spelling test scores. What they said was communication skills, teamworking and confidence. And that was all jobs across all industries. So if we're going to be setting a school curriculum for employability, we would actually only have 3 subjects, and they would be the 3 subjects we'd teach. Because then we would have children who could do the jobs we need now, not even in the future, now. If we look at what's happening in educational research, this is actually the amount of work being done around creativity, research being done about creativity. And this is a line for education. What we see is education, after the early 90s, mid-90s, it started to not care at all about creativity. So we see this decline in interest in creativity. At the same time, the yellow line is about computer industry. Right? Computer science didn't care about creativity at all. Then in the 80s, they got into home computing. And they thought maybe when people have a computer at home, they'll do creative things. But they didn't really. They just played games. Right? Then it declined. Then in 2000, we saw something miraculously happen. What was that thing? The internet, right? Suddenly you see creativity, woof, the interest in creativity has gone crazy. The same researcher who did that was wanting to come up with a definition of creativity. So in every single research article that had ever been written about creativity that was available electronically, he counted the words, right? So he could say, well, what are the key words? Now, obviously, the first few words are creative and creativity. You'd expect that, right? That's what they're about. But then look, cognitive, to do with the mind. Domain, a way of thinking. Innovation, openness. And my personal favourite, number 7, because. And I like the word because when I was a little girl and I did something naughty, my dad would say, stop it, and I would say, why? And he would say, just because. Right? So he was fundamentally right. Because is really key. Right? The because is because it adds value. If you take a coffee in this cup versus the same coffee in that cup, one is much more valuable because it brings something extra. What sort of schools do we have, though? Do we have schools like this or schools like this? And I'm not talking about the building, I'm talking about the content. Yeah? The OECD, who makes the Pisa test, is going to change the test for the next time it's operational because it said these 3 things are the key things you have to do. Subject-based knowledge, yes, it is important to understand subjects. Thinking skills and creativity, and social and behavioural skills. That's what's going to be needed for the future if we make our pie much bigger for the future. They measure a country's likelihood of success based on a thing called the European Index of Innovation. And this is how they test whether you're going to be economically successful in the future. Right? They measure 27 things under these headings. If we look under the first ones, I'm just going to take human capital, right? Look at the first thing they measure as to whether your country is going to be successful in the future. Not artists, not educators, economists, what they measure. Interestingly, the last time this information was all gathered, this was the results. It's due to be reported any day. It's due this year, 2013. When this one was done, these are all the countries in Europe. Here's the European average of innovation. And here's Sweden. Better than Finland. Yay! Yeah. So in terms of the innovation of its people, you're right up there. I suspect, though, when the next chart comes out, Finland's going to be the top. Because you've cut the number of hours in arts education in schools, and they've increased it. So I think you're going to be back below some of these other countries again. But you do this really well, so hang on to what you do really, really well. Don't believe that you don't have good education. Right? This is a comparison. This is exactly those same results just put as a list. And this is a different lot of results. This is how often you go to the theatre and art galleries and all those sorts of things, okay? What do you notice about the two lists? What do you see about the two lists? They're almost the same, right? So there's such a strong link between participating in culture and economic success. Now I'm going to skip through some things because I just wanted to finish by showing you some things happening in schools and classrooms just to give you some ideas. So forgive me for skipping through the next few slides, but the slides will be available. You can look back because I want to get on to just some pictures. So I'm going to go right to the end. Right? What works? Right? If you want to do this, you want to do it well, what works? Remember these 10 things and you'll be fine. Number 1, have partnership and collaboration. Find that person. Just turn your head quickly and find that person you pointed to before and stared at. Wave to them so you remember them. Okay, great. First stage of doing that is that partnership and collaboration. Done, right? Second one, keep flexibility in there, right? Don't get tied by rigid timetables or rigid ways of working. Flexibility is important. Make sure what you do is accessible to all. So, for example, if you have a school choir, where does everybody else sing? Okay? Have time to do what you're doing right now, which is some professional development, because you need to keep learning. Make time to reflect and evaluate. You need to spend time planning after you've done something, not always before it. Keep it local. Use what is around you because you've got lovely things around you here. Encourage everybody to approach this as researchers, asking good questions, documenting their work. Have lots of opportunities for performances and exhibitions all the time. Right? Have lots of performances and exhibitions. This is lovely because the teacher, second along, is learning violin alongside the children in his class, same time. Give your children an adequate introduction to the languages of the arts. Can they talk visual? Can they speak drama? Can they use all of those different artistic forms confidently? And finally, and most importantly, take risks. Model making mistakes, right? If you don't, you won't be successful. You've got to model taking mistakes. These are just random pictures from projects that I've been working with young people. Mathematics lessons, another mathematics lesson. Science, maths again, recording their experiences. They made a film after they made the sculptures with the foil. They're the filmmakers. Get young children and old children to work together. The older boy there was actually forbidden to go to school because he was so badly behaved. Involve other people, artists, industry, get lots of friends. Get children to tell their parents about learning. Share your experiences with others. Allow some space. Be inspirational. This is a teacher talking. It's like the children are little boats and we're gently guiding them along and they bob along for some things, and sometimes we need to help them get out. Other times we need to help them put up their sails and let go. When is yesterday coming again was a question a child asked me. I liked yesterday. When is yesterday coming again? Great question. This is a project old people and young art students working together on knitting. And they knitted on the train and changed the train. And they painted shops. And scientists and artists talked. And in places we put down paper and pencils and people start to draw. And draw and draw. And then people came together professionally and started to draw and draw and draw. They're the impacts you can have. I want to finish with an image, just a quick image. This was given to me by a refugee from Tiananmen Square. It's at the top of my stairs in my house in London, and it's a rubbing. It's done by rubbing charcoal on a stone. And it's an education policy from China from more than 2,000 years ago. And I like the fact that the education policy is a picture and a poem. How many ministers of education would release their policies in such a way? And it says that education, like the bamboo, is strong and it will always be here. And what makes it strong is the fact that we have some old things represented by the branch that we need to let go of because it's, finished, had its day. Other things represented by the strong central branch are here now, should be here, and should be here forever because they're basic and core. And new things represented by the growth at the bottom should be allowed to come up through the ground. And the poem says the same thing as the image. But what's interesting about this is every character, and it's easier to see in the real one, is actually within the leaf arrangement. And there's a point to that, which is what you need to do education is already there. But you need a teacher sometimes to point out what is already there. Good luck with your work. Thank you.
Hello. Thank you very much, Anne. And we'd like to thank you so much for coming here, sharing your thoughts and your knowledge with us.